Good old standby. Okay, so, yep, welcome, Jason Murphy here against the stream, doing some meditation and Dharma talk, some discussion on the teachings of the Buddha. My hope is that the teachings that we're offering are of use to you during not only this time, but really any time, every time. I've been working through the Satipatthana, or the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. And I've been feeling like every week, every time, there's kind of a little bit more like reflection. There's a little bit more even becoming clear to me as I'm like reflecting on the talk or the topic. So yeah, so I just wanted to say that much. I'll be focusing, again, kind of third foundation, fourth foundation tonight, meaning thoughts and emotions, and then what we call the Dharma, or the teachings of the Buddha, or the, the contemplation of what is happening to us while we're sustaining meditation practice. So let's go ahead and sit for a time. So finding maybe that's what I'll do. There we go. Finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable, where you can be relaxed and alert. Looks like people are still popping in, so welcome to those of you. Again, yeah, we'll sit for a time. And I'm gonna work through these four foundations of mindfulness as a practice, because that's kind of the point, is we're trying to philosophically or cognitively understand and then engage in the practice to further deepen our understanding. So, okay, so just finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable. Taking a few moments. And just settling into a posture where you can both be relaxed and alert. Settling into a mind that is resting in this present time experience. Opening up to the different sense doors. The sense door of sensations in the body. The sense door of hearing. And then just seeing if we can stay connected to this present time experience, allowing, if you can, allowing sounds to move into the background of your attention. It's still happening. It's still, we're not trying to shut anything out in this practice. We're really just learning to emphasize certain aspects. So feeling this breath in the body. Sometimes I like to use the instruction to aim the attention to connect with the experience of breathing, and then to sustain this connection for as long as possible, knowing that other things will arise: thoughts, sounds, smells, tastes, sights. And it's all okay. Yet for the first few moments, as we, settle in, as we collect the attention, seeing if you can kind of allow the other sense doors, including thought for now, to just be in the background. Really allowing this experience of breathing to be in the foreground, the primary anchor. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. Of course, knowing that thoughts and sounds, memories, feelings, even certain sensations will arise in our attention. And we can gently note their presence. And then with a sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back. This sitting, breathing body. again and again. Recognizing whenever the attention wanders off, and with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back. At some point, when you feel ready, beginning to open up to the other sense doors. To incorporate all of this present time experience. Seeing if it's possible to bring awareness to the arising and passing away of feeling tone. This kind of hedonic or body-centered, vibrational experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neither, or neutral. Sometimes it's referred to as a felt sense. Of course, the same instruction applies is if we find ourselves, getting on a train of thought and leaving the station, just with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back here, now. Even in that movement, seeing if there's a feeling tone connected. The invitation here is to perhaps shift the instruction to relax, observe, allow, relaxing into each new breath, each new moment, observing what's arising in all the 6 sense doors. And then allowing whatever arises to stay for a time and pass away. And just gently noting whether there's a feeling tone of pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. Relax, observe, and allow. So from here, we can begin to open up to sometimes what people call mind states, the general kind of moods that are arising through the mind. There might be some elements of the body as well. I think of it as a widening or a broadening of our awareness. We're still utilizing the instruction, relax, observe, allow. Perhaps noticing the landscape or the weather patterns. Without getting too you're kind of lost in the individual thought or stream of thoughts. To use the metaphor I gave last week or earlier in this sit, even just seeing the trains of thought without getting on the train itself. What is the mood? What is the landscape of the different mind states? We can even connect this just back to pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. For the last piece of this practice, you can even expand further into what are the tendencies of mind. Knowing a bright mind, a constricted mind, knowing a vast, open mind. And this might be felt in the body or in the head, both. Is there joy? Is there anger? Is there frustration? What's present here? Perhaps using the labels or the noting of what we call the hindrances to identify these mind states. Is there craving or pleasure seeking in the mind? Is there some form of aversion or anger, resentment? Is there a quality of sleepiness, of sluggishness of the mind? Or restlessness or agitation? Is there doubt? The same instruction applies. Relax, relaxing into this breath, this sitting, breathing body. Observing what arises as non-judgmentally as possible. And allowing whatever arises to stay for a time and pass away, as all things do. All right. So just take a moment and reflect for yourself. Like, what was that experience like for you? Was it pleasant? Was it unpleasant? Was it neutral? Did it totally suck? Was it a pain in the ass? I'm going to read a couple teachings from the Buddha, and I'll explain a little bit. I think that these two teachings actually really explain the third foundation of mindfulness. This one is called Luminous Mind. Luminous is the mind, brightly shining, but it is colored by the attachments that visit it. This unlearned people do not really understand, and so do not cultivate the mind. Luminous is the mind, brightly shining, and it is free of the attachments that visit it. This, the noble followers of the way really understand. And so for them, there is cultivation of mind. So I feel like that one, before I read the other one, I feel like that one really invites us, it gives us a little bit of hope and invites us to see that there is all of these attachments, that there's all of these mind states, and they're arising and they're passing away all day. Moods and thoughts and feelings, stories. And that somewhere like beyond that, and I don't know, I think of it as kind of the seat of the mind, is what is called luminous mind. That's what's being pointed to. That kind of like underneath the chatter, there is what one of my teachers, Ajahn Pasanno, would say, the natural peace and ease. The natural state of the mind is peace and ease. The natural state and that is illuminating, that is luminous, bright, shining. So I feel like that's what's kind of, it's like some hope, it's kind of what's pointed to, and why we cultivate the mind. Why are we even doing this? And then this next one, this is like probably the most well-known teaching in the Dhammapada, or the teaching of the Buddha. And it goes like this: we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. Speak or act with an impure mind, and trouble will follow you, as the wheel follows the ox that draws the cart. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness will follow you as your shadow, unshakable. How can a troubled mind understand the way? Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded. But once mastered, no one can help you as much, not even your father or your mother. So yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of, that teaching, I feel like there's a lot packed in there. First of all, this kind of just this idea of, we are what we think. With our thoughts, we make the world. Like with our conceptual kind of imputations, everything that's around us, what we call, like as I'm looking out at this room here, what we call this computer, what we call the chair, the window, it's all concepts. We see them and we recognize them and their perception. And then there's that other piece, okay? So that's, there's a lot there that it's construct, and there's, there's universal and there's relative, right? There's the universal truth, that we're all just particles, right? We're all just stardust. We're all just quarks. Quarks are like, I think we've gotten down to quarks are what atoms are made out of. So anything that's material, anything that's been fabricated, anything that's been created in this material world, they're just particles. And then the relative is that we give meaning to certain things. Noah talked a little bit about kind of on Monday, he talked about the khandas or the skandhas, the parts, the piles, the heaps that make up what would make up existence. So then there's this whole piece here, and I'm not going to get maybe, I don't know, we'll see what happens. I don't want to get too much into it, but, speak or act with an impure mind, and trouble will follow you as the wheel follows the ox that draws the cart. Like, what the fuck does that mean? I was given that as like a koan once a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago. And so the word impure and pure, I think, most of you have kind of heard me talk about how I don't really like it that much. There are some, there's some like kind of dogmatic, like good, evil connotations. I prefer skillful, unskillful, speak or act with an unskillful mind or an unskillful heart. And that's also, like, the word chitta means heart mind. So that's kind of what we're talking about. And then, so like, the ramifications or the momentum of that kind of action or thought plays out as the wheel follows the ox that draws the cart. I feel like that means a lot of things, but in this context, I feel like it means these mind states, that these moods, these tendencies, as I described it in the meditation, these weather patterns, the landscape of the mind gets, colored. Sometimes we call this kind of karma also. That's what's being kind of pointed to there. The way in which we act in the world becomes our tendencies, and sometimes becomes the way that we view the world. if I see the world as unsafe because I have experiences of feeling unsafe in the world, then that's going to color my view. And I'm actually going to be more conditioned to see all the things that are unsafe or unjust. Sometimes people call it like this is like the pessimistic or the optimistic view. I feel like there's this quality of like, I'm a optimistic pessimist. I kind of view myself as an optimistic pessimist. Because there's certain tendencies, yet when I'm able to kind of back away and like see that a lot of it is my view, my perception. But there are some really fucked up things that are going on. I was, during, I don't know, like however long ago it was, a month and a half ago, right? I was just, just bad news after bad news, just like being inundated with the, negative Facebook stories and the coronavirus and the, just all of it. And the economic collapse and, and it was all feels very real. If you stop watching the news, if you stop checking Facebook and, like it just kind of fades into the background. I guess giving rise to that ignorance is bliss, right? So how do we engage with it skillfully? But what I started to do, the reason why I brought that up is that I found this kind of good news movement or something like that. Have you seen that? The good news movement? It's on Instagram, and where they're focusing on like the heartfulness, the connection, the good things that are happening. A Good News Network or something. And so I started to, I limited my news feeds, and I started to focus, even though I would check in, like, okay, what's going on? Like, how many people are dying? I also started to pay attention to how many people are living, how many people are surviving. And this Good News movement or the Good News Network, they were kind of promoting that. All right, so just kind of some more context. I'll speak for a little bit more and then open up for some discussion around this topic. But just to catch people up in case, people have been not tuning in. I've been going through the Satipatthana Sutta. I've been going through the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And so Satipatthana is just that. And I've been talking about it in different ways that, even in the beginning of the Satipatthana Sutta, there's this like, this is the only way, monks. This is the only way, meditators, to free yourself from suffering. Is to kind of unpack moment to moment experience and to see it clearly, calmly. And how do we do that? Well, the first foundation of mindfulness, what we started with today, body, breath, awareness. This is grounding. This is collecting attention. That in some ways we first need to collect attention. And how do we do this? Well, this balance between concentration and mindfulness, right? This kind of focused attention. And then this kind of awareness, which moves in naturally into the second foundation of mindfulness. Even just tonight, just as we're looking at the second foundation of mindfulness, this kind of Vedana or feeling tone, there was a lot. It's actually a little bit changed now. I don't know if it's because my eyes are open or whatnot, but there was a lot of different sounds, and And sound can be a really good barometer of feeling tone, whether it's a pleasant sound or an unpleasant sound or neutral. And even that is has a little bit of perception attached to it, because what I can see as a pleasant sound might be unpleasant to you, or an unpleasant sight, or an unpleasant smell. You know, like I don't like the smell of patchouli oil. I just don't. And there's perception attached to that. But other people will smell patchouli oil, and that's very like comforting and pleasant to them. But I have some perceptual database, some history that taints my view. And I even can get into some mind states around it of, aversion. It used to be really bad. I've gotten a little more neutral with it now. But like lavender, I love the smell of lavender. Lavender is, I get like essential oil lavender and like put it on my pillow so I can like helps me sleep better. But I would never do that with patchouli oil. You know what I mean? It's like, and why? Because there's this kind of colored perception and this experience, and it's just unpleasant for me. Although some people may have a different experience. Same with sound. Certain sounds. I just moved into a new apartment building, and there are certain sounds that are, neutral. Certain sounds that are unpleasant throughout my day. And I, even here, there was some thumping and music, and it was like, at first it was like, there was some perception of like, man, like, don't they know that we're up here meditating? And then just kind of dropping that for a moment, like seeing it, there was a formation of a thought created by a sense door, and then a recognizing it, and then the dropping away of like just sound. And when I got back to just sound, it wasn't unpleasant. When I attached meaning to it, a perception, it was more unpleasant. Does that make sense? So that's some of that experience. So then I kind of talked about, or I gave the instruction. I gave a couple, and so I apologize if it felt confusing at all. But I gave some instruction about kind of really opening up from first foundation, body, breath, 6 sense doors, kind of using the context of what's happening in our experience. These 6 sense doors, body, breath, grounding, as an anchor to come back to. And then into the feeling tone, and then opening up into kind of like what's happening in our minds, like what's going on, what we can call mind states. And I kind of see this as weather patterns, and it's really in the Satipatthana Sutta. The second foundation is to feel and to know. And I also gave that feeling tone as, what did I say? Like a feeling space. I can't remember what I said. A sense, felt sense. That's what I said. Because it can like give a little bit of a texture to it, perhaps. And then the same thing is true, just like trying to give texture to what's happening in the mind. So by thinking of it as feeling mind states, you know, just like weather patterns that are moving through the mind. There's causes, there's conditions. It's causal. Everything that's going on is, you know, causal. And sometimes we have some volition, some control, you could say, where we're like conjuring things up in our mind. Oh, I want to think about this. And sometimes it's just happens, non-volitional. I think, you know, I've said, and, you know, that we have something like 70,000 thoughts a day. And, you know, I heard the Dalai Lama, actually was the translator of the Dalai Lama, say once that that our thoughts, you know, human thought is it's faster than the speed of light. So we have so many thoughts racing through, yet there's what we could call moods, which are maybe, you know, successive, more thoughts that are kind of clumped into kind of what I can call a weather pattern, right? A mood. And that's where I was kind of pointing a little bit to. We can see the quality of mind. Is there a bright mind? Is it bright? Kind of like this luminous mind that's being talked about in the teaching. Is there a darkness or a heaviness in the mind? Is there a, you know, is there a closing down? Is there a joy? Is there, you know, that there can be some like, get a little bit bigger than pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, right? A little bit bigger. But to see that there's some tendencies even. Yeah, so like light, bright, open, constricted. I think of restlessness and agitation as being very kind of constricted. Doubt also can be very kind of constricted. So moving from that bigger context into this understanding of really what we can call the fourth foundation, which is then contemplating what's happening and using the Dharma as a blueprint, as a map of how we can begin to kind of navigate what's going on in the mind. So hopefully this is helpful. Like there's this, and you know, I was talking last week about how it's like a wave. So there's like consciousness, which you can just call the ocean. Consciousness is the ocean of reality. And that each wave that gets formed can be a wave of thought, can be a wave of emotion, can be a wave that starts with feeling tone and then moves into thought pattern and then, you know, kind of forms into an identity of self, of me, of I am. And then it can crash again. And so using this instruction, relax, observe, allow, which has been my kind of main instruction for, I don't know, since 2008 maybe. So, you know, 12 years or something. And that's been, I feel like it encompasses all of what we're hopefully trying to do here, is stay connected to the physical or the grounding, the anchor, but in a relaxed way, not to be tense, not to be tight. I spent years, especially like when I was younger, just like in this really kind of ardent, like don't fucking move no matter what, like this just hardcore kind of practice. Yeah. And I realized that there was a lot of tension in that. There was a lot of constriction. And so this kind of relax, still, you're still here, but relaxing here. But not so relaxed that you fall asleep, right? So we're observing, we're going to be attentive to what's happening in our experience, physically, emotionally, perceptionally, kind of tendencies, moods, clouds, weather patterns. And then this allow is that we're not going to get fixed. We're not going to create this identity of self around the thing, whatever the thing is, whether it's a thought or an emotion or a mood. You can just see them as mind states, as mental fabrications that arise, they stay for a time, they pass away. And then looking at that as, let's see, so one of the ways in which we can talk about hindrances. What are hindrances? Well, hindrances are the things that obstruct the mind. They hinder that luminous mind that's talked about. And we can have tendencies, towards certain hindrances. So I'll just run through them. And I'll give this little bit, this is actually like a kind of a teaching of the Buddha, but I also think it relates to what we're talking about. This idea of like, okay, there's a tendency in the mind. So we're meditating and we're having this kind of awareness of what's happening. There's a formation. We're seeing a wave kind of forming, or a weather pattern, a mood. And then we can kind of name it. Aversion. Well, what is aversion? And so one of the ways the Buddha gave, it talked about a pool of water, or like a bowl of water, or a pool, like a clear. Ajahn Chah talks about a still forest pool. And what would aversion do to a still forest pool? Well, it would heat it up. It would obscure the idea of, from the Buddhas, is that when we're going to see the mind, this kind of luminous mind, clear, still, reflective. And when aversion comes into the mind, it's like it heats it up, it boils the water so that we can't see clearly, we get obstructed. And that means that we're not able to kind of tap into that natural peace and ease. That is the natural peace and ease of the mind from Ajahn Pasanno's perspective, which is Ajahn Pasanno is, just in the line of the Thai forest lineage. It goes Ajahn Pasanno, Ajahn Amaro. Well, yeah, they're kind of peers, but it goes Ajahn Pasanno, Ajahn Amaro, Ajahn Sumedho. Ajahn means teacher. Ajahn Chah, the Thai forest master. And so these teachings are passed down. Ajahn Pasanno is my teacher. Ajahn Amaro is Noah's teacher. Anyway, so aversion, boiling of the water, right? And how does that feel? Like, how does that feel in the body? Well, maybe there's a tension, there's a constriction. Oh, the mind is constricted. So, getting to know the qualities of it, the textures of what's happening by kind of naming it a little bit, giving it a little bit of, oh, this is what's happening. And not getting lost in the story of he said, she said, they did, that fucker, and personalizing it. even though sometimes it can feel personal. So just to back up, what's another hindrance is pleasure seeking or craving. What's one of the ways in which we call that? Yeah, craving, pleasure seeking, fantasy. I really noticed a strong tendency that I had, especially when I was in some kind of physical discomfort, to like seek pleasurable experience and or emotional discomfort, to seek some kind of pleasurable experience. And that has a lot of, could be drug addiction, could be, could be watching tons of TV, could be eating donuts at midnight, which I actually did the other day, but it wasn't avoidance. It was really just desire. And so using this pool of water, what does fantasy or desire in this context or pleasure seeking do? But it's like dyeing, it's like putting dye in the water, coloring, colors the water so we can't see clearly. All that we see is the color of pleasure seeking, of the dye, the obstruction. So then just kind of restlessness and agitation. Well, first, sleep, sloth and torpor, right? Sleepiness. What's the hindrance of sleepiness? How can we experience that in the body? And then this piece around like using this pool. What's the pool? It's like sluggishness. So like I think of like filled with allergy, like it becomes filled with allergy. It's like hard to move and sluggish. It's not clear. Like when you see like a swamp or something, swampy. Restlessness and agitation, which also is like worry or anxiety, This is like wind, like kind of turbulent, like wind kind of washing over, and kind of there's this whirlwind that happens with restlessness and agitation. And sometimes that's actually can be a distraction from deeper kind of, senses. And so that's where this kind of felt sense I think can really be useful. Getting into, is this unpleasant? Is there some emotional tendency? So restlessness, agitation, distraction, like the wind. And then doubt. Yeah, doubt is like cloudy water. And if you think about what does doubt do? Doubt, and I've been hit with the hindrance of doubt a lot in my life. This kind of ambiguous, ambivalent, what's the right thing to do? Is this the right path? Am I doing the right thing? Can feel, be like cloudedness, be really very clouded, obscured in another way. So these are some ways in which, moving into the fourth foundation of mindfulness, we're talking about just getting to know kind of the what's the inner landscape. And this comes through, the really the first two, and then building to the third foundation. And then the fourth foundation is then we're applying this kind of calm, collected, attentive, sensitive body, mind, heart, mind toward the Dharma, toward so, you know, this, I think the hindrances is like this like first sense of seeing a little bit more clearly. So maybe I'll expand on that a little bit more next week, the hindrances, and then moving from the hindrances into some other Four Noble Truths and 3 characteristics of existence and some different stuff. So now I'll just kind of open up to, I think yeah, that's enough for now. I'll open up to questions, and also for you in the room, if you have questions or, you know, thoughts or comments. So you could raise your hand. I can see your hand. Did it seem clear? Helpful? Yeah, the difference between sloth and torpor. I think that's, yeah, I don't exactly know like why they use those 2 words. I mean, I'm sure there's some definition. But yeah, I think of sluggishness of mind as kind of like torpor, like that kind of just so, you know, or so sleepiness and sluggishness of mind. So sleepiness is kind of a felt like body, tired, and sluggishness of mind. Sometimes I hear it called like sinking mind, where it's just like it's kind of like clouded, like another way of feeling clouded. Like that's why I can think that's why the idea of like a swamp, like it just kind of. I mean, I don't exactly know the the difference. I'm sure we could Google it and find out. But like sloth is that kind of like I think of a sloth, right? Slow moving, and then torpor just seems like it's like sleepy or like kind of like disconnected somehow. That's my thought about it. Maybe someone out there has a better definition. Until I see a hand, I'll just keep talking, and then maybe we'll just do a little bit more meditation. But another kind of way to begin to work with, like say sloth and torpor, or sleepiness or sluggishness of mind, which I actually just like better. I think to me that, or sinking mind. Sinking mind is something that I have experienced where my body's not tired, and so there's not sleepiness, but it's like it's like fog, it's like very kind of hard to stay clear about anything. That's kind of what I think fogginess is, another way to kind of maybe look at it or think about it. Anyway, I was going to say, so it doesn't matter which hindrance we're being attacked by. And in the story, right, Mara, these are Mara's weapons. Mara uses the 5 hindrances as weapons to keep us, distracted or agitated, or, seeking the kind of pleasure to avoid luminous mind, or seeing clearly, or dissolving this identity view. So that's kind of one of the ways it's described. And so by using this 3rd foundation of kind of turning toward the mind to see, what's happening here? and then being able to kind of see that there's moods or there's clouds, and then maybe there's, they're using the second foundation. We're going to get a little bit more context. And so by seeing it and staying even connected, coming back to the first foundation of mindfulness, this is where there's that, like, I see you, Mara. It's really kind of saying, like, yeah, like, I'm not going to get lost in this. Oh, this is anger. Oh, this is frustration. Oh, this is worry, doubt. So we name it, we see it. And by doing that, my experience has been, and maybe your experience has been, that it starts to break apart. We're not in it. We're not connected. It's not happening to us. Or it's not who we are, but maybe it's happening in our experience. So there's like some separation, some kind of movement that can happen. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of the best way I can describe it. And so it's that turning, using that third foundation of mindfulness, turning toward the mind, having a collected, calm, attentive presence. And then working with it. And sometimes what we can do, even, getting a little bit more into, once we're able to get through, because we do have themes. And I touched on this in the meditation. I called it trains of thought. Last week I called it boats of thought. And that these can be, what we'll see is that they're tendencies. And we have certain tendencies. Like, I had so much what is called lust in the mind, especially when I was younger, and I was like in these monasteries, and not in the monasteries, just fantasy. And sometimes it was sexual lust, and sometimes it was past experiences, and sometimes it was future experiences, and sometimes it was fantasy of just like, I want to leave this meditation retreat and eat a cheeseburger, or like, I'd much rather be sitting on a beach somewhere, or just like that kind of fantasy, so it wasn't always like kind of lustful in the sense of like sex or, pleasure seeking in that way, or relationships, or sometimes I would just like get lost. I remember getting lost in like the tattoos I want to get. And envisioning the new tattoo and where it's going to be, and who I'm going to have do it, and and then lost in that kind of fantasy, that future planning fantasy, and then not judging myself for doing it, but instead just seeing it as, oh, fantasy. And then coming back to what's happening here in the body. All right, so we have a question. Go ahead. I think I unmuted you. Unmute yourself. There you go. What's up, man?
Hey, what I got from the quote that you had earlier about where by our thoughts we shape the world. I realized, like, in meditation, many times when I have thoughts that are coming up, I'm identifying, okay, I'm thinking this, but I still stay focused on the breaths or whatever the instruction is. Is it that have you found that it's in your experience that as you identify these thoughts, that the world that you're making becomes bigger? Is that the goal, that like we?
Yeah, and so I mean, I think that's a good frame. The idea of like, if we're just constricted around these thoughts, right, then the world can be really small. I mean, I think that's a great, like, even just like some, like, you know, like one of the things that I've kind of found, and, you know, maybe I'll piss people off, but it's okay. Um, that's just a mind state arising and passing away. But the idea sometimes of activism is that it can be very constricted and very focused, and beautiful, and it's necessary. But I also have seen like it's being pushed by a lot of anger, and so that can be very constricting. And so I think some of the work of activism is actually liberating the heart. What are we really trying to go for? Even the Black Lives Matter. I mean, totally, you know, amazing, and to see that there's more there, that this is a larger social justice issue. And, you know, I think like Martin Luther King did a great job of really seeing the civil rights movement as being bigger, right? I don't know why. I just kind of decided, like, instead of like a narrow, it's just this way. And, or even like, I don't know, talking about, I mean, I don't know if that's helpful, but this idea, I don't know if that was even a really good example, but this idea of that we can just be narrow in our thinking pattern, and we can attach to a certain view and see the world as that view, from only that view. Racism is another example, just to kind of put it out there, just to kind of like rate, like what, like someone that has a narrow view around this is what racism is, and they can't see any other perspective. And that's what shapes their world. Um, and so by kind of, even like, I was just having a conversation with someone recently about, well, one, about whiteness, and two, also just about like broadening our view. About like talking with people that have different beliefs than us, different views than we have. And to do that, not in a, I'm going to change their mind, but in that it helps us kind of navigate and even see larger perspectives, like talking with Republicans that are willing to talk to you and not just try to convince you to love Trump or something. But that are, you know, like to broaden our view, like even just like here's another example. Okay, nationalism, right? Like there are a lot of Americans that believe that that's all that exists on this planet is America. You know what I mean? And like I had like tons of fear, um, around international travel, because it was conditioned, and I had a very narrow kind of view. And then I left the country, and I, you know, I got a passport, and I like did this whole thing. And then there was like this broad opening view. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It
Okay,
does.
great. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I kind of tried to bring it in terms of, um, what's happening in the here and now, but also just this kind of, if we stay small, even in our minds, like if we're staying small and identified with our thoughts, we make the world. So this is what skews our perception. So when I'm giving uh, the description of the, you know, the pools, right, and the hindrances, that those are all, if we just see it that way, then we can just view the world with that distorted perception. In Western psychology, we kind of call these things cognitive distortions. That's the way in which, like all or nothing thinking, right? Catastrophizing, you know. Um, these are perceptions that get built over years of causes and conditions. And in some, like in, I don't know why I just turned into cognitive behavioral therapy, but so in cognitive behavioral therapy, what we're trying to do is see the thoughts, see them as cognitive distortions, and then dispute the thought. So what's the alternative? What's the opposite action? What's another way? And that's actually what's happening in Buddhism too. So we're seeing, let's say, the hindrance of fantasy or pleasure seeking. And what's the wise response to that? What's the antidote? Wisdom. So wisdom, or panya in Buddhism, says this is, you know, when the Buddha is fighting Mara and he's attacked with pleasure, you know, and it's like, you know, beautiful young you know, women that are, you know, dancing and enticing with food and like pomegranates and, you know, like wine and, you know, all of this. That's the kind of the visual. And so what the Buddha does is start to see the food rotting, the beauty passing, turning, you know, becoming elderly, and then even the elderly, then frail, then death, then a corpse. And so that is the wisdom to antidote getting lost in the fantasy of things. And I could go on, but maybe I'll go on next week because we're actually just about out of time. Yeah, any last thoughts? Questions? I think I finally figured out the Zoom, YouTube setup. Okay. Well, thank you all for attending and for yeah. Let me just see. I saw a hooray. Thank you. Yeah, no worries. All right, so we'll just take a moment. Obviously, okay, so you guys know we have just about every night here, and you're on Zoom, and you know, log in, and now we're recording these so that they're live on YouTube, and they're recorded on YouTube at the Against the Stream page, so you can, or channel, so go and subscribe there. The center is run completely on the donation of those who attend. And, you know, if you're online, you know, you can always go to Venmo at Against the Stream Meditation. Or you can just go to the Against the Stream Meditation website and check us out there. And you can do some kind of donation there if you'd like. So, yeah. So let's just take a moment and just taking in all the goodness of our practice. You know, every time that we show up for meditation, that we are cultivating goodness. You know, we're cultivating, you know, some would say good karma, right? We're cultivating this goodness that is about freeing our own hearts and minds. And then also setting this intention that by doing this work, we're going to create a positive change in the world. One mind at a time, one breath at a time, starting here. So may we all do that work. May we all find freedom.